Charlie Dickens, Chapter 54, entitled Dogs. Tinker and Charlie were disturbed by the loud barking of a dog. It was pulling on its lead and it looked like it was getting out of control. The owner was an elderly lady with a very red face, and it looked like the dog was taking her for a walk rather than the other way round. Suddenly, the dog shook free from the lead and it sped towards the slurry pond as if its life depended on it. "It's not going to stop," said Charlie, and the dog ploughed straight into the slurry with wild eyes, and its long tongue hanging out and dripping with saliva. "Help us," shouted the lady as the dog sank slowly, and soon its tongue was no longer wagging, and the dog's eyes were bright with fear. "What do we do?" said Charlie, and he twiddled with his thumbs nervously. "I'm not sure," said Tinker, "but I'll think of something," he said with confidence. Charlie wished that Spider-Man was there now to help him, as the poor old lady cried out, and the now silent dog sank further and further into the quagmire, inch by inch, and each pitiful bark pierced Charlie's heart, and he felt that he had to act. "We have to do something," he said, and he was terrified that the poor dog would just disappear under the dirt and oily slime. It was a terrible way to go. "I'm going in," said Tinker to Charlie, and to the old lady's amazement. Charlie stared at Tinker as Tinker took off his coat, and then he boldly or foolishly waded into the slurry. He grabbed the trolley for balance, and he moved so slowly and carefully like a mummy. The dog's paws were scratching at the surface as if it was propelled. But the only thing that happened was that the dog sank even further, and it raised its poor head above the cold slurry and stared at the safe blue sky. Charlie watched open-mouthed as Tinker waded waist-deep into the horrible slurry, and he was terrified that he was going to sink under like a stone and disappear forever. The dog slipped further as it held its head up higher in panic. The owner began to cry, and it was obvious that she thought that she would never see her beloved dog again, and Charlie was beginning to have his doubts too. Tinker was now up to his waist, and he could feel the slurry sucking at him, and it was like he was in the tentacles of a giant octopus. Tinker was smart, and he knew the risks. He had carefully balanced his feet on the trail of debris from abandoned tires to rusty bicycles. Everything had been thrown in there. Luckily for Tinker, it was keeping him afloat and out of danger. But neither Charlie nor the old lady were any wiser, and they were lost in dark, ominous thoughts. Charlie began to panic inside as the dog slipped further under, and Tinker seemed too far away to do anything about it. He began to daydream, and it was the only way that he could cope with the stress rising within him like a volcano. The barking of the dog and the grey surroundings disappeared as once again Spider-Man swung into action. He wasn't fazed by the mud, and he glided across the surface like a ballerina, and he was too quick to sink. It was as if he was on an ice rink. Spider-Man gently pulled the dog free with a loud plop, as if a cork had been finally separated from an old bottle of wine. Charlie smiled in admiration, and then he was quickly brought back down to earth when Tinker shouted his name, and then he threw a slimy rope his way. Charlie wasn't too keen on grabbing it, and he winced as his hands curled round the impossibly sticky rope. It was thick with brown mud as sticky as a wedding cake. Tinker had somehow tied the rope to the dog's collar, and he was walking backwards slowly and pulling the mewing dog out of the slippy sludge. Charlie reluctantly pulled the rope, trying not to gasp at the coldness in his hands. He could see the relieved-looking dog coming towards him as if on a slow-motion elevator. "Pull!" Tinker shouted so loudly to wake the heavens, and the poor lady's dog owner was hopping about from one foot to the other in anticipation and stress. But at least she was smiling, thought Charlie. Finally, the dog was free, and it bounded towards its owner as if nothing had happened. Tinker was smiling even though he was covered in grey sludge, and it dripped off him like porridge. "I think it's time we went home," said Charlie, and Tinker didn't even have to answer.